Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. So today on the show, I have former Parsity grad Ryan Passer. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, really happy to chat with you today. Want to get into how you got into coding, what led you to Parsity, what you're doing now, and generally advice for people out there that are looking to get into coding and kind of your, maybe some hot takes on the current market and tech trends that you're seeing. But before we start there, like, what are you doing now? Where are you working and what are you doing?
Yeah. So I'm working at a company that's actually an agency, and they specialize in working with clients in FinTech, the FinTech sphere. So a lot of investment banking, wealth management, insurance. I've been on projects for all those sorts of things, but also a couple that are a little more unique, like, for example, an app that lets you redeem gift cards that are unused for other gift cards or gift them or just cash them. And then also, most recently, more of a cybersecurity kind of project where you can pull domains or passwords and check their exposure on the darknet.
Whoa.
So I've dipped my toes in a lot of different areas, but
Very cool.
as far as like the tech stack I use, it's been for the web a lot of React and TypeScript, backend Nest.js and then PostgreSQL, and then also I've done a little bit of mobile development with Flutter, so that's been a big learning curve as well.
Wow, that's really cool. I love hearing that when people like
Cool.
go to a program like Parsity or whatever, and they learn like some foundational skill, and then they go do something that's completely different. Cause that's like been my
Yeah.
experience as well. By the way, quick plug for Parsity. We now have TypeScript and Next.js in the curriculum because I just saw it was like blowing up everywhere. Like even I work at Clorox, not a sexy tech company, and we're exploring how to use Next.js in the future. Um, that's really
Nice.
cool. What did you do before this? Were you like in some sort of finance industry or something?
So before this, I worked in digital marketing for 6 years. I was like a data analyst role, managing paid search accounts. But I was always, I would crave more of a technical kind of work. And I expressed that to my manager at the time, and she was really cool about it. And she encouraged me to pursue that. And she even hooked me up with the dev team, my company, and we were able to do a little bit of collaboration together. And that's where I got really the front row view of what that kind of work entails and its processes. And
Yep.
that's when the seed really began to get planted in my head that, hey, maybe I could do this in the future.
That's really cool. That's awesome that you got a chance to do that. I feel like a lot of companies now, people have this idea that like tech companies are the only places where you write code or have development teams. But I've worked at, for example, like Grocery Outlet, which is a small chain or like kind of a big chain of stores in California and like the Midwest. And they have a development team, worked at small startups, now work at Clorox. And that's really cool. You got that opportunity. And with the team you're on now, are you like one of a few or are you on a really large team?
So at my company, there's a lot of developers. I'd say probably somewhere around 50. But each project's a little different. I've been on projects where it's just really me and one other developer, or some where I've been a team of up to 8 or 9 developers in the same same project. So it's varied quite a bit.
Nice. How did you like learn to code? I mean, I know you went to Parsity, but generally people come in with a little bit of background before. Like, what led you to say, you know what, I need a boot camp to teach me this stuff, or I need some additional resource to teach me?
Yeah, so I did have a little bit of experience in college that sort of nudged me in that direction. When I was going into college, I was thinking that maybe I would pursue computer science. I was interested in it, but as is the case for most freshmen on their first semester, you're like last on the pecking order for choosing the classes you get into. So I couldn't get into Comp 101. I ended up getting into Econ 101 and just had a really great professor and a great experience. So I ended up majoring in Econ and didn't really do anything computer science related until my senior year. I just had to take some more electives. So I took that computer science class, and it was the most engaged I was in a class my entire college career. It's the only 8 a.m. class I was excited about. I'm not a morning person at all,
Gotcha.
but got up early, looking forward to that class. And I remember going to the dining hall afterwards for breakfast and like just getting started on the homework right away because it was like a puzzle or a word search kind of a
Yeah.
thing. That feeling
Mhm.
of racking my brain trying to find solutions to things. And I was really bummed that I found that I had that affinity for coding so late, and I figured that's probably where it was going to end at that point.
Wow. That that is an interesting one too, because I feel like most of the people that I meet that do well, I know this isn't a prerequisite, but I kind of feel like it kind of is. Like you got to enjoy coding at some level. I feel like to be good at it or to be successful at it. What do you think about that?
Oh no, I agree 100%. I probably wouldn't have made that leap of faith doing a boot camp if I hadn't had that prior JavaScript experience, knowing that I would enjoy that sort of thing. So, yeah, I've had friends in the past who also did boot camps at Parsity, and I was recommended like checking out Code Academy beforehand and like just getting a feel for if you think this is something that you'd be interested in. Because if you hate it, if you don't like it, if you're neutral about it, it's not going to work out. You have to really enjoy it.
100% agree. Like, I know that might get me in trouble. Maybe it'll even stop some potential sales for Parsity. But like, I have a pretty strong opinion that if you don't find some joy in this, like, it's going to be really hard to sustain your motivation in a program like whatever program you go to. 3 6 months of doing nonstop coding, and then another 3 to 6 months of applying a lot. Like, you're going to have to actually enjoy this thing on some level. I feel like in order to be decent at it. Also, because you got to learn so much. Like, you got your job,
Yeah.
and what kind of skills did you come into the job with? I guess tech
Um,
skills.
into my current
Yeah.
job. Yeah. So everything learned from Parsity, especially like the React proficiency. A lot, as I mentioned, a lot of the work I'm doing is in React. But I think also just I came in with some soft skills I developed in my other role
Mhm.
in my other career before too that set me apart a little bit compared to maybe some computer science grads who didn't have that work
Yeah.
experience. So yeah, kind of both worlds, the tech skills, but also the soft skills.
What kind of soft skills do you see is important as a software developer? There's, like, a bit of this stereotype or this fantasy of, like, the lone wolf developer, but you just said you work on a team of 50. I work on a team. I've worked on many teams. Like, that's not the reality. So, what are some soft skills that you see which are important on the job and that you think other people should try to acquire?
Yeah, just being able to communicate cleanly and like just collaborating on a team. You can go lone wolf in terms of like getting your tickets knocked out, heads down for tasks, but um, for all the moving parts with delivery teams and design and other developers, like it's important to make sure everyone's on the same page. And and also being able to reach out when needed if you're unsure or hitting a wall. You don't want to just brute force things all the time and not bother anybody else if you're unsure, because that just introduces problems later on.
For
Um,
sure.
so yeah, just being vocal.
I like that. Yeah, communication's a huge one. I have onboarded a few juniors, and I've been a junior, freaked out on my first day. I'm like, what can I ask? What can I not ask? Are people going to think I'm an idiot? Every time I switch
Sure.
jobs, I go through this exit
Yeah, I get
crisis
that. Definitely when you're starting out, you feel a little insecure about, oh, I'm going to be perceived as this newbie
Yep.
junior who's just bugging everybody, but you have to be a sponge.
I would say even further in that first week or month, or the first, like, even 90 days, like, you should be asking all the questions. 'Cause people still have a lot more tolerance and patience with you at that stage because they're like, oh, you're the new guy or the new girl. Let me help you out. And then, like,
Yeah.
6 months later, though, it gets kind of awkward if you ask like those super noob questions about something like, why didn't you ask that in day three? And you're like, oh, I should have asked this a long time ago.
That's a good point.
Yeah. What were, like, some of the things that surprised you about being a software developer, switching careers, and now you go in the first day or first week? What was some things you're like, "Oh, I didn't know this was, like, part of the job," or maybe engineering culture or whatever?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the biggest surprise or learning curve early on in terms of like getting into project work was how important uh, clean code is and having that structure um, really stuck to while the work's being done. So, looking back at some of the projects I did in Parsity and just some of my personal projects before, starting work was, it was kind of rough looking back at that, kind of cringe at some of the spaghetti code, only decipherable by me. Uh, so that's probably the biggest adjustment. Um, Early on for me was, really being meticulous in terms of keeping that code base clean so that other developers can come on later who have, no context and be able to figure things out pretty easily what's going on.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Like, because we have, evals and Parsity, and we have somebody grade them, and you get some feedback on the work. But there's no like, not working on a large team or thinking about what about the life cycle of this code I'm going to write like in 5 years or 3 years or even 1 year. Is
Yeah.
this going to work the same? And how is the next person going to take this and run with
Mhm.
it? It's a good one.
And I feel like you get a taste of that with, in Parsity with like the Agile project, especially, um, in terms of like stepping on each other's toes in the same branch, the same code base. But, yeah, nothing can really prepare you for, a large scale project with a big team until you get there.
Yeah, it's really difficult to mimic that. And also it's hard because every team has a different flavor of Git that they like to do. In
Yeah.
my opinion, like, I hate rebasing. Some people are like, "Oh, we only rebase," or some people like, "Do this." I mean, I've had this, like, inter-team conflict. It's actually one of those really oddly emotional things that people get into. Like, there's a few emotional, like, topics in software. Testing, Git
Mhm.
strategy, and estimations.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've like I've taken the wrong side on all those issues at some point. Now I'm like still learning now, like, what are the ways you can and should do them, and also like that they're interchangeable in a lot of ways. I'm
Yeah.
curious about this job. I haven't talked to you before this, so I don't know the answer to this. I'm betting and I'm guessing that you didn't need to show your portfolio project to get the job. But can you tell me what your interview process was like for this job and just generally out there when you were interviewing?
Yeah. Um, you're right. I didn't have to show the project. I talked about it in the interview,
Yep.
but for this job, the whole process, it started with, like, just a meeting with the recruiter first, and then kind of getting to know each other and like what I was about,
Mhm.
what I was looking for, and then learn a little bit about the company. Um, After that, I did a technical interview with two developers, um, and it wasn't anything like doing any code in front of them in a live setting. It was just more talking about topics, about React, JavaScript, and then just my experiences. That's primarily when I talked about my final project, and kind of like walked them through what the code was like, and then the challenges about that. Um, and then I had a take home technical assessment that was not timed, so that was
That is
awesome.
nice.
Uh, I had a lot of experiences tripped up by those in my prior, interview processes. And then I think I had one more interview, that was, it wasn't technical. It was just kind of more of um, a personal interview, I guess you'd say, just about my other work experience and, um, I guess questions related to things that weren't coding strictly. So I guess there was 4 interviews, assessment total. Um, or no, 3 interviews and assessment total. I think that was it.
That's funny. And it's also really representative of like my experience and many other people's experiences that I've spoken with. I think there's this idea that everybody's gonna get data structure and algorithms for their interviews. And it sounds like you
Mhm.
had zero of those in your interview circuit.
No, no, yeah, no questions about that. I did the extra module on that with Parsity, but I would not have been super prepared for any deep questions on on that if I had gotten them.
Yeah, right. Don't tell anybody. I didn't know any of those until like 3 years into my career. I think I then went
Mhm.
to like backfill some of that computer science fundamental knowledge, and it was helpful,
Yeah.
like to go to a big tech if you want to interview at a big tech company. I'm also in the Bay Area, so some of the startups that think they're big tech companies try to mimic those interviews too, and it's helpful for that. But I'll be honest, some of my interviews were just like get to know yous. Like and more people have that experience than I think people realize. Like, "Hey, tell me tell me about yourself. Why do you wanna work here? Tell me about a project you worked on. What was challenging about it?" Those are the kind of questions I see that are overrepresented instead of, like, traverse this tree and O of in time or something like that.
Yeah, I know. Grinding lead code is a really popular preparation strategy for
Yeah.
these interviews. I did a little bit of that too, but um, I guess maybe it's just anecdotal for me. But yeah, like you were mentioning, having a more like personal conversation that's more of a conversation interview. Even the technical interview I had with the developers, I was talking about use cases and more like descriptive conversation versus like getting really in the weeds was like, what is closure? You know?
Yeah. I kinda hate that question. I've asked these questions too. Like, I've made the mistake of asking these JavaScript trivia questions, and I regret that now in retrospect because it doesn't tell you much about a candidate. It tells you could they memorize some stuff, and the reality is you should probably still have those answers in the back of your brain somewhere because 'cause they're so
For
common to
sure.
get, but yeah, they just don't tell you much about a person. I much prefer, like, working on a project with somebody, maybe a take home, which I'm kind of against because I feel like that's asking somebody to do a lot of work on their own outside of work hours. But, you know, different strokes. But there's a few types of interviews that everybody's gonna get: the take home, the get to know you, and, like, the code in front of me type of exam. Do you do interviews
Yep.
now? Do you, like, administer interviews at your job?
No, no, I haven't done any of that yet. Definitely be intrigued to do so. I'm curious what's like on the other end. Cause I don't know about you, but like I'm definitely someone who, get pretty anxious, interviews and maybe I do a good job of not showing it, but,
Oh, me too.
it'd be interesting to be on the other end of that.
I'll tell you, I've interviewed a lot more than usual in the last year when, like, during the pandemic hiring spree, I was doing quite a lot of interviews, and I would get nervous because, like, maybe I'm asking a question that I'm not that certain about, and the person's smarter than me, or maybe they're interviewing for a role that's a little higher or in a language that I'm not familiar with. So I get pretty nervous as well. I think people don't realize that I hide it. I try to hide it pretty well, but at the same time, like, I don't know. Maybe this person I'm interviewing thinks I'm an idiot. And they're like, I can't go here anymore. This guy wasn't smart enough. And never had that happen, by the way. It'd be a really awkward interview. What are some ways you kept motivated like after graduating? What are some things you were doing to stay technically proficient and not like lose all your coding skills between graduation and getting hired?
Yeah, so I think, it worked out pretty well for me. Um, in between graduation and getting hired, it was, about 5 months. So that was a decent chunk of time, while I was on the job search. But during that, my final project, it was um, a softball roster management app was the final project. And I did that intentionally because it was a problem that, I played intramural softball. And so my manager or the team manager wanted this functionality in place to help the team. And so like it was a real setting where I could deploy this thing and like it would be a tool that could be used in real life. And so I just kept refining that, got feedback from the team captain and like just kept busy, like making V2, V3, V4 of this app and kind of chronicling that development process on LinkedIn a little bit to try to get
Nice.
get some views.
I like it, man. That's smart. Yeah, that's really smart. That's like the thing I think is the power of a side project. It's not like showing off this beautiful little app, but it's about keeping you emotionally invested in your learning because it's really hard to just grind lead code, like you were saying, on, about for an hour a day. It's difficult because it's just no real emotional attachment you get to it. Like, cool, I solved the problem. Or maybe you just get so frustrated that you're like, I can't even solve anything. And you just slam your computer in frustration. But if you're building something that you actually use, then I tend to see people who, like, can sustain engagement on that for much longer than
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for sure, it keeps you more invested, and motivated, but also like it's just better, in my experience in interviews to be able to tell a story about a real world thing that you're building out and being used and you have an attachment to versus, you know, a more, uh, vague, context of a leak code problem.
Yep, totally agree on that one. I'm huge into side projects. I still do them now. They still because when I wanna learn something outside of my job, like you're learning Flutter on the job, which is really cool. I wanna learn
Mhm.
like Rust, for example, and I'm thinking, "What can I build? What's a little project I can make that'll be interesting for me to, like, learn Rust?" I'm way behind, by the way. I got too many going on at this point. What are some technology trends that you're watching now as a software engineer and that you think people that are beginning to code should be aware of?
In my experience, there's less roles for front end and back end specifically. I think there's more expectation that a developer coming in would have both of those skills and even a little bit of DevOps, which I'm still learning a lot too. And maybe that's again anecdotal, but I think if you're feeling weak in one of those areas, definitely trying to hone and get a little more proficient. Because like going into my current job, I definitely have more of a passion and more of a affinity for the front end. But I've definitely been thrown in the fire on some back end projects and needed to really spend some time honing those skills too. And so um, yeah, I think a little more holistic of an approach to what you are working on, what you specialize in is probably useful, even if you're uncomfortable with one of those areas.
I would totally agree. And I think there's some statistics to back you up, or at least some surveys to back up what you're saying also. Cause I've noticed this throughout my own career. And I was curious, maybe it's just me, but Stack Overflow came out with a survey last year and it showed that like more and more developers that are hired are full stack.
Hmm.
And I think you're right. As the industry trends towards smaller companies and less tech focused companies, like as the big tech giants are laying off people left and right, smaller places are actually hiring still. And there's more niche industries that are hiring, like industries that typically weren't, you didn't associate with tech. And they just care less about this differentiation and also their budgets. I mean, they don't want to hire a full back end team and a full front end team. They're like, I just need a full stack developer that can do the thing. And the DevOps piece is really interesting too, because you're right. I'm assuming that you have to deploy code as well. Is that like part of the DevOps procedure, or are you talking about like monitoring the code that you've deployed, or both?
Yeah, deployment, also just management between like dev and prod and staging, and then also, I mean, I've had to do some of the work for mobile with getting things accessible with test flight for iOS or the equivalent on Android too. So it's just like these little things that aren't strictly code related, but are still important to be able to pick up on because you might be tasked with doing the sorts of things on projects.
Yeah, yeah, really, really good point there. Some quick hot takes for you. How do you feel about TypeScript?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of TypeScript. I didn't really see the power of it until um, you know, having projects that had a lot of moving parts inside of it, a lot of different opportunities to have errors go wrong if you're not defining the specific types across the code base. I think when I did the code, I did like after graduating, I went through the code academy for TypeScript. And I was like, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah,
But it wasn't until like understanding how big these things can really get and like just how error prone it can be without having that safeguard in place. So big fan of TypeScript.
okay, cool. Um, Boot camps or CS degree?
I don't I don't want to like compare them in terms of like one's better than the other.
Fair
I
enough.
think they're both viable options. Obviously, if you have a CS degree, you're getting a lot more of a like holistic, um, you know, understanding of computer science as a field. It's not just coding and programming, but like all that goes into it. But I think boot camps are great in terms of like having those skills, getting those hard skills of developing. And I think 3 month or 6 month or however many months, it doesn't really matter as long as you have the right mindset and are willing to put the time and effort in to hone those skills. So I think both are totally viable. And I've seen more and more, boot camp, um, grads competing for these types of roles and even, working in my company too.
Yeah, yeah. I would mostly agree. I think if you're younger, I might say, hey, maybe get a CS degree. Like if you're fresh out of high school, if like my son who's about to turn 18 said, hey, I want to get a degree, I might say, well, if you're already 18, if you're 25 or 30, I'm like, you probably just should go to a boot camp at this point. I wouldn't necessarily go back to get a 4-year degree somewhere unless you have a lot of time and money that you can kind of burn at that age, which just most people do not. What's an underrated skill for software engineers?
Uh, so I think I would say reading docs, understanding uh, exactly the tech that's going on under the hood. I think a lot of the problems that I faced early on, um, both in the boot camp, but also like first few months of my job, would have been solved if I had just taken the time to like thoroughly read the docs for all the technology that we were implementing. I think a lot of people go straight to YouTube tutorials or Stack Overflow, but the docs can really answer most problems that come up.
For sure. Also, the idea now that everything has to be consumed via video when like really it's a lot faster and more efficient just to read stuff. Like I like videos too, but like I want to just get to the problem and like watching a video, I'm like, this is too long. I'm like, I just want the part where you show me the thing that I have to do. But yeah,
Yep.
there's a saying, maybe you've heard of it, RTFM. If you heard that before.
RTFM.
Yeah.
No.
Read the effing manual.
Yeah, I agree.
What advice would you give to people that are in a boot camp currently?
Uh, yeah, I would say probably, um, I know imposter syndrome, talking about that. You probably heard it a million times, but it's definitely real. And it's something I faced a ton. So don't compare yourself against your peers, both in the boot camp as well as on the job search and in the job itself whenever you land it. Um, because everyone's coding, journey is just very different. And, you're going to hit a lot of bumps in the road. It's just part of the process. I mentioned earlier that I had, some challenges with like the take home coding assessments that were timed. I think that the time limit on those just freaked me out and like, put me in the wrong
I
mindset.
hate
But
those.
yeah, every single one I took, I got a little bit better at. I knew what to expect. And I think, that built up to me being able to have a couple of really good interview processes. It's like, have you like you play video games? Dark Souls. You ever heard Dark
No, I
Souls?
don't. I'm like the
Okay,
only
okay.
developer that doesn't play video games.
It's like one of those brutally difficult games, but predictable. So, it's one of those games where you're going to die a whole lot, but each time you die, you learn something from it, and you can, you know, adjust and tweak your approach, and then get a little further the next time. So, yeah, you just can't give up. You can't go hollow. You just gotta fight that imposter syndrome and keep persevering. You'll eventually get where you want to be.
I love that. That's really great and underrated advice. I tend to get more technical, but I'm glad you mentioned that. It's really important for people to know that, there's a game that's being played. We're all playing in a different field in our own way. And like you looking at somebody's step 12 and comparing it to your step 2, you have no clue like what we're all going through. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Yep, of course.
Last one
I like
for
that.
you. LinkedIn or Twitter or neither.
Uh, for promoting yourself or just in general?
Let's say like specifically for like career changers who want to get into software.
Okay, yeah, well, definitely LinkedIn in that case. And this is, I for all social media, I'm not someone who like posts ever. I'm more of a lurker always. So that's actually something that Aaron recommended to me when I was struggling a little bit on the job search, was to like be a little more present on LinkedIn and catalog those the what I was doing with my softball app on LinkedIn. And so I was skeptical at first and definitely out of my comfort zone, but I got a surprising amount of views. It's crazy how LinkedIn, like the network can kind of explode, and all the connections of connections are like seeing your posts and liking it. And so from that, I heard from a couple of recruiters. I just got some more confidence. So yeah, definitely LinkedIn, but I'm also in general a pretty avid Twitter user. And I prefer that platform overall.
I think that's the thing. It's like LinkedIn has become this like necessary evil. I personally liked it, and I don't like Twitter, but I see that a lot of people find a lot of value on Twitter. It's way more tech content and it's way more cutting edge stuff. But I've found that for job stuff, I've had better luck on LinkedIn, so I'm pretty biased. By the way, if you're listening to this and you want to get some LinkedIn learning templates, you can reach out to me or go to parsity.io and sign up and get the syllabus or get the ultimate JS guide, and I'll send you those as well. We've given those out to students to use, so hopefully they're helpful. People that have like writer's block or want to like, well, what do I post about and how do I post it? Try to make it a little easier for you. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on the show today. This has been really fun to talk with you and learn more about what you're doing. And for people that do want to reach out to you and, maybe see what you're doing or, just connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn's fine. It's Ryan Passer. My email is rpasser93@gmail.com. Those two places are where you'll have the, best luck finding me.
Sweet. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks again for coming on. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out Parsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our Dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.